Welcome to the Money Bear podcast. I've got my friend Whitney on, who, as soon as I saw her face, I was just like, yay, I'm so happy to get to talk to you because I haven't seen you. Well, I saw you, when was that? October? When I was in Boise?
October last year. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. But anyway, Whitney and I spent a day in Boise, Idaho when I was there. And actually, I went to Boise, Idaho pretty much just to see Whitney. Like, I remember telling her,
I adore you.
I put you on my map on my way back. I was like, I went out of my way to come here and then go
It was the
the rest of the
best.
way. And it was such a pleasant surprise because it was like, I don't know if I would have gone to Idaho for any other reason. And I was so blown away by how beautiful it is. Like
It is a
gold
great state.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it was just wonderful seeing you too. So, anyway, Whitney, welcome to the Money Bear podcast. I'm excited to have you.
I'm so stoked to be here to hang out with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Heck yeah. So, Whitney, why don't you tell everybody, give your little elevator speech and who you are in the internet and what you're doing in real life as well?
Yeah, so Whitney Hansen's my name. I have my debt-free story is kind of what led me into financial coaching and helping others with their finances. So I graduated 2010 with $30,000 of debt. And I remember feeling like, whew, that's a lot of money for like a 21-year-old. I'm like, holy crap, like what am I going to do to get out of this? And so I put together a plan and paid off all of my debt in 10 months. And at that same time, I was trying to figure out what the heck do I want to be when I grow up. I was working in public accounting, realized very quickly the cube life was not my jam. Like I hated it. And so I was like, shoot, what am I going to do here? And so I kind of like flapped around a little bit, ended up working in higher education, went back to school for my master's degree. And that's where at that time, like the only path to helping people with money was CPA or becoming a financial planner. That was pretty
Hmm.
much it. Financial coaching wasn't a thing yet. And so I didn't really think that was a possibility, but I had people asking me like, hey, how did you pay off debt? How do I create a budget? What does all this crap mean? And we would just sit down and chat about it. And that's where it's like, aha, I can actually start a business. So I am a financial coach. That's my full-time gig now, and a podcast host. I run a podcast called The Money Nerds. So that's what I do. And then for fundies, I like to travel. I like to test side hustles, see how much money people actually make doing certain things. But that's what I do.
And she's leaving out a big part of it, which is the reason we're having her on. I mean, we were going to have her on the show anyway, but I wanted specifically to talk to her about this. I thought when you're like, for funsies, what I do in my free time is I just build
Just
Airbnbs.
build random crap. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, she's got another for funsies. So Whitney's amazing. And Whitney's been in, I feel like, the financial content creation longer than a lot of people. Because when did you start the podcast? And did you have something before the podcast?
No, I mean, I dabbled with YouTube, but I would hardly count that as taking it seriously. But podcast 6 years now.
Wow. So you're one of the
Isn't that
OG.
wild? Yeah.
Yes. One of the OG money podcasts out there. So you guys will have to check her out. I've been on that podcast too, The
Heck
Money
yeah.
Nerds. And actually, the microphone we're using now is thanks to Whitney. I was like listening.
Twinsies.
Yeah, I was listening to her podcast episode and I was like, girl, your audio sounds great. What are you using? So luckily we now have a better mic because like I listened to the ones before I got this recent mic and it's night and day. So we can all thank Whitney for that.
Thanks.
Yes. Okay. So the reason that I wanted to bring you on is because you've done some really cool projects specifically to build Airbnb
Mhm.
properties that are unique experiences. And the main reason that I wanted to talk about this is because we all know we've seen the headlines about the housing crisis. We've seen headlines about how Airbnb is ruining rental markets. We've seen, these issues in real estate investing bloom up, especially now that there is such a housing crisis. And what I think is so cool about the way that you are doing Airbnb is that it does not impact that. You're doing it in a way that is not taking away housing from people. You are building these new experiences. So, kind of tell us first, how did you decide to even approach an Airbnb in this manner? Like, what was the inspiration? How did you decide, I'm going to buy this plot of land and build a dome?
So dumb. So dumb sometimes. You look at it. So the inspiration was sort of based off of data. Like I'm a numbers girl through and through. So for me, if I was to invest any amount of money, it has to have a good ROI. And if it doesn't, I'm really not that interested. So from an investment standpoint, when I was looking into all the different types of investments that we have, long-term rentals, you have midterm rentals now, you have like your own house where you're house hacking and renting out a portion. There's so many different ways to get started. And all of those things were interesting to me, but none of those really combine this like love of real estate investing with DIY. 'Cause I love building stuff. Like that is my jam. If I could just like decorate houses and tear down walls, I would be stoked.
I
And
love
so
it.
trying to it's so fun to me. So trying to figure out like how do you blend those two things seamlessly, two of my passions, in a way that actually makes money. That's where the short rentals really comes into play. But I think what most people miss is when they think of short-term rentals, they think of that traditional maybe rental arbitrage where they're renting and leasing out different apartment complexes and they're turning those into Airbnbs, or they're buying a house and specifically turning that into an Airbnb. That has never really resonated with me because it's not, for one thing, creative enough in my eyes. And
Hmm.
the second part is the income is good while it's good, but what happens when cities start to shut down Airbnbs, which is now what we're seeing.
Right.
And so the unique portion has kind of stood the test of time. Like if you look at all of the properties that are really cool and different that stand out on Airbnb, like their top grossing property ever looks like a little tiny mushroom in California. And that's
Wow.
something that it's I can't remember how much it's made either. It's been a lot though, considering that they probably put 50 to $60,000 into this and it generates, I would imagine, a couple 100,000 a year. When you get those numbers, it makes more sense that if you want to stand out in a very saturated market, do well, and have a little bit of fun, you've got to go for more of those unique experiences. So that's
Mhm.
kind of the reason on why I chose this passion, and it makes more money.
I love that it's like not only is it not adding to the housing crisis situation, but it's also a really
Yeah.
successful way of doing things from a profit standpoint. And not only that, like the investment is
Mhm.
a lot lower than having to buy an entire piece of property, like an entire condo or an entire single
Yeah.
family home, which I think is really cool. So I'm curious, like as a host, do you just have access to like top grossing Airbnb data information? Like I'm like, where did you find
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, kind of, right? So you don't have that as a host, but there's lots of different platforms that will help you understand that. So the first one's called AirDNA. It's airdna.co.
Mm,
You can plug in any city and it will start to show you the overall occupancy rate in that area. It shows you roughly how much people make. I really don't care too much about that because that's like mansions and tiny houses. So it's not really all that helpful. But that occupancy rate is. And then you can scroll down through their map of listings and see, oh, here's a property that's kind of close to me. How much are they actually making? So it gives you all of that data and it aggregates Airbnb and Verbo. I think it's just those
okay,
two. So it's
very
kind of fun
cool.
to see. So that's how you can see that data.
And what was the resource again?
AirDNA.co.
AirDNA.co. Okay, that's super interesting. Just
It's
even just
awesome.
to browse and be like,
Oh, it's so
just
nerdy and so fun.
yes, I love that. Okay, and so once you decided, okay, I want to go the unique route, I want to provide people with these unique experiences. What was kind of the
Mhm.
first process for you in terms of deciding what was that experience going to look like? How were you going to approach it? Were you going to stay in Boise? Like, tell us a little bit about what that process was for you. What, 2 years ago?
2 years ago. Yeah, we bought our first piece of property to build on in October 2020, I believe it
Okay.
was. And so this is like right before the market gets crazy stuff. But we were initially looking kind of close to home. So property is 2 hours outside of Boise. So it's in the mountains. It's super cute. It's like this really kind of touristy area, but not too crazy. And so when we were looking around at different pieces of property, we toured probably 6 different lots that were in our price range, which that time was like 50,000 or less. And so we were looking around for different lots. I came across this one that I had ironically saved on Zillow a year ago, which was so wild.
What are
And
the
so when
chances?
I know, and so I think I like toured that just to see. I'm like, all right, it's been on my Zillow list for a year, like literally a year. Let's just go look at it and see what we think. And we walked on this lot. We were like, this is so dope. We wanted it, had these massive granite boulders. It was on a very steep slope. And so that it hadn't sold for that reason because it's not good for a traditional house. And we
Right.
initially thought that's what we were going to do was like a small, cute Scandinavian style cabin. But
Mm.
once we started to look into the topography of the land, it wasn't really feasible. Like a septic system would have been crazy. A well would have been over $50,000. Electricity was about 35,000 to bring in, not even a quarter of a mile. So everything is just so much more expensive that it really was a camp. So that helped see like what is the land support, what type of structure.
Mhm.
And for us, that was more of a glamping, like a yurt, a tent, a dome, like any of that kind of stuff was kind of on the table.
Okay. Now I'm so curious. Where did you learn all of this? How, like, you're throwing out words like topography. You're like, I knew right away that this was not going to be what this land was for. And I'm like, wow, Whitney, you're even cooler than I already knew you were.
Oh my God, you're too
Oh my
sweet.
God. But how, like, for real, how do you even know that stuff? Like, was it, were you
Yeah.
into real estate? Was this something that took years for you to learn? Was like, explain yourself.
Yeah. So, okay, I one of my best friends does Airbnbs. This is her full-time gig. She builds really cool, unique properties. So,
Hmm.
fire lookout tower, a hot hole, a ship house, like you name it, she has it. And so her and I have chatted quite a bit over her project. So I've been chatting with her about like, hey, what do you look for in land? And she's very similar. And a lot of times, the only land you can truly afford that you can build on is sloped land. It's really hard to build on. Like, it's not good for traditional homes. And so it makes it a little bit cheaper to get into. But that's kind of how I started learning was just having a mentor.
That is so cool. I mean, it just goes to show you the people you know and like how that can open up doors you don't even realize. Was she remind
Correct.
me, I remember you showing me her Instagram account when we were hiking together. Was
Yeah.
was she an internet friend or was she somebody you knew in real life?
She started out as an internet friend, and
Okay.
she lives in Idaho, but I mean, the girl's on the road more times than she is at home. It's crazy. And so I
Yes.
think the way we connected is she did like some fun presentation talking about lifestyle experiments. And I saw her presentation and was like, hey, she seems cool. So I just reached out to her and was like, I loved your presentation. It was really great, very inspirational. We just kind of supported each other from there and then became buds. So it's kind of weird
Ah,
how that works.
I just love the internet for exactly that
Me
reason.
too.
Like there's a lot of bad things, but there's so many good things, and that's why
Yeah,
I
for
mean
sure.
I love hearing stories of that. So okay, very cool. So you found your slice of land for the right topography for a dome, and what was the next step?
So the next step from there was trying to put together a good budget to see what are we looking at? How much is it going to cost to buy the dome, the insulation liner, the deck that the dome sits on? How much does it cost to have it engineered? Like all of that stuff. So the best place to start if you're starting this process is to go talk to the county. The
Mm,
county is going to tell you exactly what you can and cannot do. They are primed to say no. So I will say that for in full transparency, they're going to tell you no to almost everything because all of these unique properties, they don't fit the mold. Like it's not normal. So it's hard to say, here's how our regulations apply to this when it's like, is it even a house? Is it not a house? Like, what is
right.
it? So that's where you start, and then they'll tell you what you need. So for us, it was we needed our deck to be engineered, we needed it to be inspected, we need to make sure that there was like if we any gray water under a certain amount that has to be taken care of. So they give you all those parameters, and then you can kind of work within that.
Okay, so step one, go to the county. Were you guys able to kind of navigate the request from the county without a lawyer or without like an architect to like to guide you? Or do you think most people work with an architect? Kind of what was your guys' approach?
It's a good question. I think for most people, you don't need to involve anybody else yet. And
Hmm.
so you don't have to bring in the architect, you don't have to bring in a lawyer. If your city is giving you a hard time and saying you can't build, let's say, like a traditional house, even though you can, then you would bring in an attorney. But typically, it doesn't go to that level, at least not
Hmm.
in the beginning. So
Okay.
once they give you the parameters, then if they need it to be engineered, so for us, the snow load is crazy in the mountains. So the decks all have to be engineered to withstand certain thresholds. And so you do have to bring in like structural engineering at that point, but that's like a contractor that you would hire.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So then you go to the county, you get all the things that you need in order to even begin the project. And then
Right.
what? Did you guys design the dome yourselves? Did you hire out a contractor to design it for you? Was it pretty cut and
Yeah.
easy? I'm like, you're literally talking to like a baby here, where I'm like, so what next? What did you do?
So
Teach me the steps, because I'm like, how does one even go from I want to build a dome to building one?
it's kind of weird. So after you have your engineering in place, cool thing about domes is there's kits. So think of
Mm,
like a yurt. So a yurt, you probably don't have to have that engineered because it's already been done. It's just like, hey, throw up this kit, you're good. And so when you find your manufacturer, we used a company called Pacific Domes.
okay.
They are in Oregon. They're fantastic. They are a little bit pricier. So to give you context, like the dome itself, not the insulation liner, is about $15,000. And so
Okay.
that's the metal struts, then the cover that's white that goes over the top. So about 15 grand there. And if you want the insulation, you're looking at another roughly $7,000.
Okay.
And so that's like step two. Step one is building that platform. And so
Mm.
that's where you have your prep work, your engineering, and then you can go in there and essentially build like a really strong deck. And so that's where you start is your foundation. And then from there, you throw up the dome.
Okay, and the dome you DIY'd, like, you put that once you ordered the structure and the insulation
Yes.
and the covering, you then were like, "All right, it's time to start building."
Yeah, pretty much. So what we did while our dome was in back order for quite some time, they got super, super popular over the pandemic and the prices went up. The lead time was crazy long, like years for some people. And so it was a really crazy process. So we went through and built stairs and walkways because it's a sloped lot. So you have to be able to kind of safely access it. So it was
Mhm.
building all of the walkways. We built a sauna. And so that was like while we were waiting for our dome to get here.
Okay, you were like, "All right, we're gonna do everything we can while this thing's on back order."
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, because I do remember, like, when we first met at FinCon in 2021, you
Yeah.
were I think you were still waiting for the dome, or
I
you had
might have
ju
been.
or you had just gotten it. Like, I can't remember, but
I think I had maybe just gotten yeah, actually, that would have been true.
yeah, and then you just listed the dome, what, 6 months ago?
Yeah,
Started listing.
December is when we officially listed to the public.
Okay, so almost a year and a half from the inception of the idea to
Yeah,
listing it on Airbnb. So you gotta have some tenacity here if all my future dome builders listening
you
right now.
do, and a lot of cash because I guess that's
Yeah.
the other negative part of these unique structures is that you are gonna struggle to get financing because it's not traditional. You can't just get a comm and say, "Oh, a dome is worth this much money," compared to a normal house, like, it's really tough. So getting loans on these types of properties is very difficult.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that part. So, like, for you guys, you
Yeah,
just bankrolled it. I mean, I guess in a way,
exactly.
we're had so before you came to the plan, I'm gonna build a dome, had you been kind of hoarding cash for an opportunity like that for a few years?
Yep, exactly. We're pretty good at saving, so we were just sitting on some cash and waiting for the right time.
Okay, but and it like, was that cash, like, you knew what it was gonna be for? Was, like, some kind of project like that? Or was it
I
just like
knew yeah, I knew a property, I didn't know, like, what exactly. It was just
yeah.
whenever I found a piece of land that fit what I wanted, I would hold that land. So even if I didn't have enough money to build on it, I would have just still held on to that for a little bit of time.
Okay, alright. So this is like a years long process, especially without the loan access. And then so then you build your dome, and then that dome actual building process, how long did that take?
The dome itself took 2 weekends.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, like, the structure goes up so fast. It's all the prep work to get to that point that's so tedious.
Wow. Okay. So two I was prepared for like 6 months or something.
No, no, it is insane. Like, we had 4, maybe 5 people helping us, and so you have to have, like, a super tall ladder. It's
Mhm.
very like, everything meets in a hub, so it meets in, like, a central place, and then you have all of your little spokes that kinda go out, and
Right.
so you have to go in this, like, very tedious order, where
Mm.
this has to be in front of this one, and this one, and it was such a pain in the butt. So that was about the hardest process, but, yeah, the dome itself, the structure goes up super fast.
Wow. And then from there, once the structure's up, it's insulated, then do you just proceed with
Yeah.
decorating?
Yep. Yep,
Wow,
exactly.
the
So
fun
then
part.
you go through. That is the fun part. I think that's the
Mhm.
part that everybody gets excited about, but is the cheaper part of the whole thing. Like the most expensive is by far the structure and the foundation.
Which is wild because I think, like, an uneducated person for Airbnbs, I would think, "Oh, the decorating is, like, one of the more expensive parts of it," but it's like, well, when you've already gone through everything, you're like, "What's a few
Yeah,
extra $1,000?"
legitimately. That's exactly right.
You're like, "This is just a rounding error at this point."
Feels like
Oh,
it.
yeah, okay, so then in terms of getting it uploaded to Airbnb and getting that moving, kinda what has that process been like for you? Because I always wonder when people have a new property that has no reviews, it's got, it's literally a dome in the woods. I'm
Right.
sure getting the first couple of, like, and I don't know if this is true or not, getting the
Yeah.
first couple of, like, reviews and people staying there might take a little bit of time. What was the process like for you? Because this was your first Airbnb,
Yes.
right?
First ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually easier than I expected, but I think only because we had been talking about it and sharing it on Instagram and TikTok and like all the platforms for so long that people they were part of the journey. And I think that is kind of
Gotcha.
key. So anytime you do these types of projects to kind of generate the hype and get people excited about it, you really do have to talk about it. You have to share the process. Even if it's like boring stuff like, oh yeah, we dug a hole today, like still share that. And that for us, having choose those for a few guests. It was actually people that we knew that had been following the journey. So they came pretty quickly.
So your first couple of guests were people who had been following the journey, and did they book
Yeah.
directly through you, or did they book through Airbnb?
So we only book through Airbnb for now. We do no
Mhm,
direct bookings and it's a lot more expensive, but it's a little bit easier to have all of that in one single platform. And
mhm.
so they booked directly through there. We did in the winter 2 night minimum while we got our systems off the ground and tried to figure out who's going to be our cleaner, how are we going to do turnovers, how do we get firewood up there, like all of the logistic stuff. That's yeah, 2 night minimum was about all we could handle.
Okay, and now it's been launched and it's been up for a little
Yeah.
while now. So how has it been going? What are some of the learning curves that you've had to adjust to? Was there anything that surprised you about going live? Tell us more.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing that surprised me so far, and this is a good thing, is that we have had very few pain in the butt guests. Like,
Yay!
it's been fantastic as a whole. And I think part of that is because from the marketing language, we don't shy away from anything but the dome. We tell people it's off the grid, there's no running water, we have a porta potty, this is the sitch. So when they get there, it's not surprising to them. They already know what to expect. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people do shy away from that. They try to like church it up a little bit more. I don't think that's what you should do. I think you need to be upfront about the limitations. Here's what people are signing up for. And so for us, I'd say most of our are fantastic.
That's amazing.
They've been great. Yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the biggest surprise.
that's amazing. Also, do you have, like, a company that comes out and services the porta potty?
Yes. Yeah. So they
Okay.
come weekly to service the porta potty, and you do have to pay them. I think for us, it's like 180 a month.
Okay. Did you ever think you'd be the proud owner of a porta potty?
No, I don't even own it. I rent it. So I don't even own the porta potty.
Oh my gosh. Ah, the
Never in
glamorous
my
life
life.
of Airbnb experiences. Porta
It's
potties.
so out of control. This is kind of surprising too, though, to be fair. So our price point on the dome is between 155 and 165 a night.
Mhm.
And I swear to you, Chloe, I was like, nobody in mind is rent a dome at $160 a night with a porta potty, no running water. You have to load the wood stove in the middle of the night. Like that, I was like, no way. And people love it. They
Well,
seriously do it. It's like a total difference.
because it's an experience for 2 nights.
It
I could
is.
rough it, and, like, it's so funny, I'm
Yes.
like, "Rough it," but, like, for me, that would be
Yeah.
roughing it where I'm like, "Oh,
Would be for
I
me
can't have
too.
a shower, I, like,
Uh-huh.
you have to use a water bottle to brush my teeth," like, that
Exactly.
but it's, like, almost a challenge, and I think
Yeah.
too, a lot of people now are looking for an escape. They're looking for the ability to completely disconnect and, like, connect in a way that, normally we don't get to, so I love that.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh,
Thanks.
so
We enjoy
so
it.
do you know how long it will take for this project to be profitable based off of what you think, like, the vacancy rates will be? And, obviously the porta potty expenses and property taxes, whatever else you've got going on.
Yeah. The insurance is probably the biggest piece for us. So insurance and porta potty and firewood. Those are the two big
Okay.
ones, or the three big ones. We were profitable from January on. Like December, we took a bit of a loss while we bought more firewood and tried to figure out what the crap we were doing. But yeah, January on, we've been profitable every month.
That's amazing. And is it like, has it been pretty
Yeah.
decent cash flow for you?
Yeah, it has. Like we're putting it all back into the property right now. So eventually
Yeah.
we want to buy like bring in electricity and do some other things. So right now our intention is to not take a profit for probably 2 years,
Okay.
but it will be completely like break even within 2.5. So it'll pay for
Nice.
itself completely, which is great.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Because I mean, it sounds like the overall investment was, would you say like close to 100 grand with the
Yeah, I would
$50,000?
say close to. And that was including our land, but
Yeah.
our land was a good deal. So that could completely throw you depending on how you do it. But I would say 75,000 is a good amount to plan for decorating the dome itself, insulation, your wood stove. If you want to do something like a sauna, it would be a little bit closer to 75.
Okay. All right. So then most people might, not entrepreneurs, might be like, cool, I did that. I'm going to take a break. Maybe in a couple years I'll do another one, but not Whitney.
Smart. Smart.
Not Whitney. Not Whitney, who also has a money coaching business, who also
Oh my
runs
God, I
a
know.
podcast, also does all of these other things. Whitney, before I think the dome was even 100% finished, I think when I saw you in October, you had like your first guest there this week, that weekend. It was like,
Yeah.
go budget girl, right? Or she was
Yeah.
coming like the
Yeah.
following week.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So at that point, you already had your next project planned. So
I
tell us
did.
about your next project.
So part of it is I really believe when opportunities come up, whether you're ready or not, you better damn well jump on it. And that was one of those situations where Airbnb was doing this global fund where essentially they were looking for 100 projects to fund. And these were all different stages. Some were from the ground up, some were already existing projects. It was just all over the board. So they did the global call to have people submit the wackiest, quirkiest, weird ideas, and we're going to fund it as part of their OMG category. So the OMG category, if you go on Airbnb, it's tons of different, like you'll see domes, barns, countryside, beachfront,
UFOs.
OMG. Yeah, all the weird crap, right? So that's what they were looking for. And at that time, we were considering applying. And I have a few weird ideas in my head, of course, of projects that I'd love to do. And so we were walking around, Tony and I, and saying, okay, like what would be kind of cool? Around the same time, my mom mentioned wanting to start a flower farm. So she has some property in Burley and said, this would be great. It's 2 hours south of Boise. And I want to do a flower farm. So I'm like, what would the flower farm? And I'm like, what if we did like a giant flower pot? That's kind of dumb. Maybe we should do that. So
Oh my
we
gosh, that's
submitted
so
this
cool.
idea. Yeah. Yeah. So you submit the idea and it goes through different phases of judging. And you have to submit like financials and like how are you going to make it happen? And can you do it within a certain budget? And so that's what they're looking for. And we were lucky enough to have our project chosen. So we're building a giant flower pot.
I love this on so many different levels. So the internet went out slightly, so I want to repeat what she said. She said so her mom was looking for a like was wanting to start a flower farm, found this, which also how cute is that? Her mom's just like, I want to start a flower farm. I didn't even know you could have flower farms.
Isn't that
God,
weird?
Boise, Idaho is a completely different planet than what I am used to. You guys are incredible human beings. So she comes to her, says that, and at the same time, Whitney's thinking about submitting an idea to this Airbnb competition. And she's like, well, what would be cute in the middle of a flower farm? A flower pot. So you are now working in the throes of working on a Airbnb that is a flower pot. Tell us about your flower pot plan.
It's the coolest. So it is about 24 feet in the air. It is a 20-foot diameter. So the bottom floor, 20 feet, it goes up to about 30 to give you that taper. And it has a rooftop patio. So it's going to be amazing. You're going to be surrounded by your flower farm. There's a little view of the mountains. It's like country Idaho. So it's really that small town feel. And so when you drive to the flower pot, you're going to immediately be parking, walking down this like cute little pathway. getting inside of the flower pot, it will have that taper. It's all like a soil brown organic earth color on the inside to kind of mimic the soil. And it has a lofted bedroom, it's got a little kitchen, true cool bathroom, like it's gonna be amazing. And then a back patio with a hot tub, some seating areas, and just a little fire pit. It's gonna be
That
incredible.
is so cute. I, like, can't
Super.
wait to see it. I bet you're gonna get some media coverage on that once that's set there because that's like an
Yeah.
attraction now to
Yeah.
Boise or where you said how far away is it from Boise?
About 2.5 is actually what it is.
It's about 2.5 hours away?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe the city that it's in will be like, "We need to put this on the map. We're gonna cover it in our town newspaper."
I think they probably would. Yeah, the cool
Yeah.
thing is these projects are definitely because they're so interesting and different, they have already gotten a lot of media coverage. So from a business standpoint, this is so important. Pay attention to like who's featuring you, who's talking about your project. I have a spreadsheet where it's like all of the people that have mentioned. It's been like the Smithsonian put my pictures in there. It was crazy. So
That's so
my
cool.
goal is I will go back to all of those media publications when we launch and say, hey, you mentioned us before. Are you interested in doing a media trip or any type of feature? So it's like you have to like constantly be thinking about how do I
Yeah.
get my property in front of more people?
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm so excited to
Yeah.
see this like come to fruition for you. And like I can't wait to see the media coverage on it because what a cool thing. And again, in Boise, Idaho, like 2.5 hours away from
Yeah.
Boise, Idaho, where you may not expect it. So what a cool project. And again, what a cool
Mhm.
way to develop a passive income. And we'll say passive income stream, air quotes, because obviously it's a lot of work up front, but
Right.
eventually it's going to be this project that you and your mom are running semi passively, I would say. Is your goal to continue doing some Airbnb experiences? Oh my God, pieces?
Yes, I've got a laundry list of projects that I'd love to do. And so the next one, I can't really say what it'll be because it just depends on the land I find. If I find a
Yeah.
good deal on property and it fits one of my visions, then yeah, I'll build something and there's no specific order, just whenever I find a good deal.
I love that. I love that so much. That's so cool. Like, how fun. What a fun approach to life. Just being
It
like,
is fun.
where else can I put something weird that people can stay in?
It's pretty great.
I have, I guess it's a logist I don't know, a random question. How many people do you think, and I don't know if you get to see this or not, but
Mm.
how many people are like local who are booking the property just for like a fun experience, like specifically to the dome?
For the dome, I would have to estimate probably 80 to 90% are local, meaning like Boise, Nana, Caldwell. So like within a couple hour drive.
Yeah,
In the summer, I think it'll be different because there's a lot more road trippers, people doing
right.
hiking. So I don't know what it'll be this summer, but for now it is pretty much mostly local people.
Yeah, because I honestly in some of my, like, little weekend getaways or not too long ago, I rented an Airbnb just to have a staycation, and I was just looking at, like, what's in the
Um,
area, and, like, that would be a perfect staycation for, like, somebody who's trying to disconnect or something, so I was
yeah,
curious, like, who are the clientele that are coming? It's interesting, though, that 80 to
yeah,
90%, but again, it's because it's that unique experience. That's what people are looking
right.
for, whether they're close or whether they're far away.
Yep.
Um,
And
very
mostly
cool.
women that book the dome, which is also interesting because it's for couples. And I would say as a whole, it tends to be like traditional couples that are maybe like mid to late 20s. And it's mostly the women that are booking, which is so fun, which is also helpful for marketing, right? If you know that in Facebook ads, you can just say, okay, this is my exact demographic. And it helps so much with your marketing efforts.
Yeah, that's cool, and Airbnb gives you all that data, I assume?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, they
Okay.
give you, like, the name, you can see how many guests, like, all of that stuff, so you have to do a little bit extra compilation there, but it's
Yeah,
not too bad. Like, if you pay close attention, you'll see who's actually booking, who's
yeah,
writing the check, who's charging their card, then
right.
where are they coming from, it'll typically tell you that.
Very cool. Ah, what a fun little like, the side business that will eventually be
Yeah.
your full time, right? That's kinda what you're looking for?
We'll
I
find
can't remember.
out. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we'll see, we'll
Maybe
see.
I'm open to
Yeah,
it. I don't know. I think for now, coaching and podcasting is still my number one focus and probably always will be. But I
yeah.
also think it's a myth that a lot of people think we have to do one singular job. Like, we
Mhm.
are so multi-passionate that if you're smart with your money, you put some money aside for fun investment projects, you can do whatever the heck you want. Like, you can have
Yep.
5 different careers over the course of 10 years, and I kinda love that freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking to my friend Tyler about that of just like the ability to live below your means and squirrel away money. It gives you
Yeah.
this unmatched freedom and this unmatched level of options that I think a lot of us, when we are stuck in kind of like that 9 to 5 traditional cycle where we're living paycheck to paycheck or we're just barely saving, we think we're stuck. We don't see another
Mhm.
path. And it's often the path is, well, let's raise your income and let's cut your expenses as much as possible because suddenly there's this opportunity in between those two things and how much you
Yeah.
make and how much you spend. So I love hearing the different ways that people use that opportunity.
I agree. I think it's one of those things where you don't know that you're gonna need the money until, like, a cool opportunity comes up, and so often we blow our money on random stuff where, too many car payments, a house we couldn't really afford. Then
Mhm.
when these really great opportunities do come up, you have to forgo them because you're just not financially prepared. And so
Yeah.
I do think it is a really good thing if you wanna get into real estate investing of any type, definitely get your finances in order because it is so cash intensive that you're gonna need it. Like, you definitely will. It's hard to get financing, so you wanna make sure you have the cash prepared.
Yeah, especially as you said in the unique property situation. No, it's interesting too because as I mentioned before we hopped on the call, I'm in preparation to buy my first home, and
Yeah.
which means I'm hoarding more cash than I ever have before, and it's so like uncomfortable for me because I'm so used to just being like anything beyond my emergency fund and beyond my savings for taxes is going straight into the stock market. And it's
Oh.
like, of course, with the stock market being down, I'm just like, I just want to funnel all of my money into the stock market. And it's like, okay, Chloe, but this is a different type of an investment. So it's like, it's okay.
It
You
is.
got to do this too. Luckily, high yield savings accounts are doing better right now. So at least,
They're fantastic right now.
yeah. So at least down payment fund isn't completely making no money, but
Which is good.
awesome. Well, I loved talking to you about this. Thank you for dealing with such grace my random questions and being like, I'm a baby, walk me through this.
No, I appreciate it. Those are really good questions.
Yeah. So before we get to our two fun questions, let's just do quick answer, quick rapid fire. For somebody who is interested in doing this, who is like, "Ooh, this sounds fun. I think I might like want to pursue this or like travel down that road that Whitney's also on." What would you say your top 3 tips are and where you would direct somebody who's considering doing the same thing?
I would say first is look at your own finances, make sure that's in order and that you can save a good chunk of money. The second thing to do would be to start to study this stuff, go on Airbnb, look at different properties, run analysis to see, how much money could they roughly make. So when a good deal does come up, you're ready to move on it. And
Mhm.
then the third thing I would say is to go to real estate meetup groups and start to meet people in your area. I think if you do those three things, when you find a good opportunity will be.
I love that. And for you, were you mostly using Bigger Pockets for like real estate meetups or did you find another platform that's hosting them?
Yeah, Bigger Pockets. There's lots of conferences. I haven't been to many of those for real estate, but those are also good places. And I'd say podcasting, I'm kind of lucky because I get to talk with cool people all the time. So I was able to ask these questions that I had in the form of podcast.
I mean, honestly, that's the ultimate life hack is like, I'm like, I get all these people's time for free and I get to ask
It's so
any
great.
question I want.
Right?
It
It's
is.
so fun.
It truly is a life hack for sure. So everyone go start a podcast so you can interview people and ask annoying
If
questions.
if nothing else, you will get a lot of good information.
100%. Awesome. Cool. All right. Now, before we move on to the fun questions, tell us again, where can people find you? How can they work with you? Promote yourself.
Yeah, the best place to go is any podcast player, search for The Money Nerds and start with Chloe's episode. I think if you love Chloe, which I hope you do if you listen to this podcast, you will enjoy that episode too, because we dive into a lot of like mental health cross section. I just think it was a really good episode.
Love you're like, oh, hopefully you love her. And my immediate thought was of somebody hate listening.
No, they do sometimes. They
They're
do.
just listening and just like sitting there angry.
Waiting for
It's
that
like,
one moment.
yeah, they're like, I can't wait to email her about something that she messed up on or something she
Oh,
missed
I'm
up.
gonna leave a review. For real though.
I mean,
They're out
sadly,
there.
we do know they're out there, but that's just a funny thing to think about because, like, there's so many other things people could
Sad.
do with their time. Well, even if you're hate listening, we appreciate you, I guess. I don't know.
Thanks
Most
for
of
the
you are love
download.
listening. Yeah, thanks for the download. We appreciate you. All right, Whitney. Now, my two fun questions for you is first, what is your very first money memory?
My very first money memory was buying candy. My dad owned a pallet distributing company. We had lots of truck drivers come in, and there was a guy that we called the candy guy, which is kind of creepy in
A little
hindsight.
creepy.
Would always have like damaged boxes of candy. And so I would buy that for like $5 and get more sprees than anybody in the world needed. And I would eat as much as I could. And finally, I'm tired of eating candy. So I would go sell it on the bus and at the playground. So that was my early memory, was that you can truly make money doing damn near anything at any age. And I
Yes.
loved it.
I love that. What a fun first memory. And what I love about that is if you go back and you listen to like the first 5 podcast episodes that I ever did with guests, like I think 3 out of the 5 were that was their first money memory too, was like buying
Oh my
candy
God.
and then selling it like for a upcharge. And I'm like, there must be something with like buying candy and selling it in grade school and like a correlation with that in entrepreneurs because
Has to be.
the fact that it was Mark from Better Wallet, then it was Deli-Ann's sister Natalia, who's my business coach, and then it was Deli-Ann, and it was just like boom, and I was like, what the
So
this is
funny.
it's so funny. And I can't remember. I think Vanessa from Wonder Onward, I think her first money memory was something like that. I can't
Love it.
remember. So anyway, you're now part of the candy posse.
Perfect.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, and then my final question for you. Is there anything that you're like binging right now, you're obsessed with, whether it's like a television show, a podcast series, a new brand of cereal? What's something you're obsessed with right now?
I wish that was cereal. That'd be great. Okay. It's a podcast and it is so beautifully done and so creepy. It's called Spooked. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Ooh, I love creepy stuff. I haven't heard this one.
Oh my God, he's so incredible. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the way he narrates and brings in the storytelling elements as a podcaster, I admire the business side of that. It's so much work.
Yeah.
As a listener, it's so weird. I love it. So it's called Spooked, and that's what I'm currently binging.
Okay, I love it. Well, and fun fact about me and Whitney, I knew we were going to be pals. I mean, I already knew we were going to be pals at this point, but when I was like, "Hey, you want to just like go to the prison?" Like the old go to the go to the old pen because it was October when I was visiting in
Yeah.
Boise and it was beautiful and we were hanging out at the winery and I was like, "Hey, I was thinking about going to the prison later, like the old prison. You want to go?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so
Absolutely.
we immediately like went, and they were like already closing. So I was like, "Tomorrow? Yeah." And she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we did, and it was a good time.
It is so haunted. Could you feel that? Like, could you tell that there was some crap that went down?
I mean, you could definitely get the vibe for sure. I think any prison, you always get that vibe of like clearly bad stuff
True.
happened here, and it's like
And churches and theaters.
oh yeah, it's always those places, always.
It is.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was really fun to chat with you. Now we're all going to go
Yeah.
make our own weird Airbnb experiences.
I hope you do. I want some cool places to stay at, so please do.
I know, but you guys check out Boise, Idaho, and we'll link some of Whitney's resources down in the show notes and where you can find her. Thank you so much for listening to the Money Bear podcast. If you've made it this far, do us a favor, take 2 seconds, rate, review, and subscribe. It seriously means the world to me. And if you just take a sec to do that, I will appreciate you endlessly. And if you do, let me know on Instagram and I'll thank you personally. So, got that. And Of course, since we're talking about anything financial on this show, please note that nothing on this show is intended as financial advice. I don't know you, unfortunately, and because of that, I cannot tell you what to do with your money. You got to work with a financial professional who knows your situation, who is preferably a fiduciary, and keep in mind that everything that we talk about on this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It's all my opinion. So, there's that. If you want to see our full terms and conditions, head on over to the show notes. And while you're there, we've got free resources for you to get started on your money journey down in the show notes as well, including a free guide to help you with your budgeting templates and budgeting tutorials and investing 101, understanding the different accounts that are out there. All that good stuff is inside of my free guide, which is also available at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide. And if you're ready to take our relationship to the next level, also, I've got a free investing class that is available at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/webinar. We host it once a month. If you're ready to take our relationship to the next level, I am also hosting a monthly investing class. And that investing class, you can find the times we're offering it this month at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/webinar. That link is in the show notes as well. And that's where you have the chance to meet me live and ask those money questions live. It's a good time. We've had over 20,000 people as of recording this join or register. And yeah, it's always nice to meet you guys. So I hope to see you there. Again, all that is available down in the show notes. So thank you again for coming and listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.